Bad boy.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen? You've tuned in live to the flyest sports and entertainment podcast in all the land. This is Stat Lines Matter. I'm your host, as always, Mr. Mark Stewart, sitting here with my partner in crime, as always, Mr. Rob Hunter Jr. What's going on, bro?
What's up, man? How you doing?
I'm doing really, really well. I want to get right into a couple of key subjects. You did some quick hitters between our last podcast and this podcast that have really, really amplified some key conversations. And I wanted to give them the attention that they both deserve because, interestingly enough, I think both of them are sort of in the moment of what people are talking about. The first thing I want to get into, you had a quick hitter about Kobe Bryant being. People were asking on one of our clips why we weren't including Kobe Bryant in the GOAT conversation. And you have always had some very strong opinions on Kobe. And now the context is different because obviously Kobe is not with us, so rest in peace. So this conversation is about his game. We're obviously not having any conversations about his life. But I want you to give some context to how you view Kobe's career, where you place him as an all-timer, and why he's not in your GOAT conversation. I want to give you an opportunity to, to expand on the idea because you sort of boiled everything down to a minute, but I want you to be able to expand on it.
Well, I think Kobe Bryant is an all-time great, and I think that he obviously proved that the years after he played with Shaquille O'Neal. So when I posted the promo piece for our GOAT episode, got a lot of spirited comments. You see Wilt, a lot of people asking how come we didn't include Wilt, Kareem, but one of the folks that were going pretty hard were the Jordan folks, but the Kobe folks were saying that LeBron's not even better than Kobe. Why is Kobe not in this discussion? My response to that was very simply, well, you can't have a guy in the discussion when he, the first part was playing with the Finals MVP 3 years straight, and he just wasn't the Finals MVP. He was the Lakers' best player while y'all were together the entire time. So if you take out the Finals when they played together and you just look at their numbers while they played together over 461 games, it's clear that Shaquille O'Neal was their best player. And so that was the context. So when you start talking about, okay, is he I believe his resume is bolstered by having those 3 rings and what his role was in that, not that it wasn't obviously a critical or a big piece of what they were doing, but Shaq was the guy in those finals and throughout the season and throughout the seasons that they played together. And if you look at Kobe's career after Shaq, that's when his numbers, I believe that's when he started to make his case for who he thought he was when they played together, what his numbers could and should have been, but they just simply weren't. He averaged 21 points a game when they were 21.9, I believe, points a game when him and Shaq played together. Shaq averaged 27. The rebounds, obviously, I don't even need to go into that. And I feel like, I don't feel like to say that Kobe Bryant was the second best player, and try to seem like that's an argument. That's not an argument. That's a fact. He was the second best player on their team while him and Shaq were together. And the numbers bear that out and the results bear that out.
I mean, yeah, I think, and I think it's hard to make a legitimate argument against that. I think what throws people in, or I think maybe what doesn't enter the conversation. And when I was thinking about this conversation this morning, and like, why don't people factor in? Like, I think there's this thing called X factors that happen that are about perception, because sports is largely about perception. We remember plays, we remember series, we remember big shots, we remember things. And Kobe is one of those guys that has a lot of that on his plate. Some with Shaq, some without Shaq. one could argue, and I would argue, and this is not against what you said, because I think Shaq was an older player and he was a dominant player at a time when the center position was still an important piece, inside presence. And Kobe was asked to reduce himself into that role by Phil Jackson.
A lot of people going, thank you, Mark.
well, I mean, I think that's true, but understand the context of this. Like, Phil, and this, I think this sort of expands into a larger conversation about how we see the game before and how we look at guys now. Now everything is individual. Everything is about guys' efficiency, how many points he has. Like, you know, we're stat crazy because of fantasy. We're stat crazy because of so many things. And like, we don't put emphasis on coaches and team objectives. And one of the things that Phil did both in Chicago and in LA was take these crazy amounts of personalities and people who had individual feelings about their games and their place in the game and get them to put those things second for the purposes of winning titles. Even Michael's a guy who could have, you know, averaged 35, 37, 38 every season in his prime. But Phil and the coaching staff was like, no, you got to get people involved. You got to do things. You got to entrust your teammates. And I think that was always the rub between Kobe.
Asking to be a little bit more LeBron-like. Distribute the ball.
Well, I don't think it's necessarily about distribution per se, but it's about not feeling like you got to take it on all yourself. Because in those early years, it was like Michael was feeling like it was just me, and it probably was just him. And then once Phil was able to go, no, listen, expand, trust these guys, they can do things, then it got better and better. And I think when he got to LA, that trust was already kind of built in because he had already won it. He had already won it 6 times. And they were together not winning under Del Harris, right?
Right.
So then it was coming in and it was like, okay, I need Kobe, I need your dope, but I need you to do this. You're the young guy. And it was a different era, even with the guys coming out of high school, where it was like, you wasn't going to just turn your team over to an 18-year-old and say, go have at it.
Especially not because he wasn't good enough.
Well,
he wasn't good enough.
I mean, we don't know if he was good enough.
I know because Phil would have said, "Let's Kobe, you do the thing," and then Shaq, you take a step back. If he felt like that was a path to the championship, because it wasn't an either or thing. It wasn't. Well, you know, we could win 3 with Kobe. No, it wasn't.
No, of course not. I mean, but I think you're being a little disingenuous when you say he couldn't have done it. He was 18 years old out of high school at a time when high school players were just coming, so no one was going to say. Like, even if you look at his minutes per game, they were like, we're going to bring this guy along slow, regardless of what his skill was. He's probably the second best player on the team the day he got there. But they weren't going to go, here, go play 35 minutes a game. He played, like, when I looked at the thing, I think he played like 17 minutes a game or something like that his first year. But it wasn't because he couldn't handle it. It was like, obviously he could, but he had to, the coach was like, there is something bigger that we're after here, and it's not you getting your game off. Like, now it's like, you get a kid, they're going to throw him in there. They're going to give him minutes, and they'll even send a veteran home to give him your minutes. That wasn't going to happen in those days, and it wasn't going to happen with that team's personnel and that coach. You know what I'm saying?
I mean,
so I think that offers context to this is what he did first year, this is what he did second year. Like, it wasn't like Kobe was on some, like, everybody knew the prospect that he was. One of the great prospects to come out as a high school player, and his ascension was what everybody projected, or most everybody projected.
Yeah, but I think you had guys like Tracy McGrady came in, they play big minutes. Kevin Garnett, you come in, you start, you play big minutes. Kobe just wasn't ready. His game wasn't ready. He even admitted that. He admitted he didn't have the strength. He didn't have particularly in his legs. And you saw
but neither did those other guys.
And you saw him in big moments come up short. Particularly, obviously, we remember that. Yeah, we remember that. So you literally could not give him the team because the team would have found
but you wouldn't. But
so you couldn't do it and expect to win a championship.
Exactly, but I think that's the case for every high school player, including LeBron.
Hence, that's why Shaq was their best player the entire time they were together.
Right, but I also say part of that is, yes, you can look back and go, okay, yeah, statistically he was an older player at a dominant center time, and at a time when the coach was going, this is what we want to run, and this is how we want to run it, and this is what will lead us to victory, and it did. So it's almost like I'm not going to penalize his perception as a player because he was able to fit within the team concept of what the coach was asking.
I
him
don't
to
think it's penalizing. We're just talking about in respect. At least I'm not. We're just talking about within respect to the GOAT conversation. That's all. I don't think. I think people who really rock hard for Kobe, they seemingly all are Laker fans. but I'm saying they take on the narrative that, oh, if he's not in the conversation, you know, you're disrespecting Kobe. I saw that a lot, and I don't think that at all. I think what Kobe did, particularly after Shaq, was like cemented his legacy as one of the NBA all-time greats, and that's how I feel.
I will say this though, I think that, in my humble opinion, I think Kobe was the reason that they won. I don't think and I know Shaq has become very sensitive in his later years, but the issues that Kobe had with Shaq that have come out subsequently, Shaq wanted to rap. He wanted to make movies. Like
Kobe rapped.
Yeah, but Shaq placed it in a different priority. Like the biggest issue that Kobe and Shaq had is Shaq didn't work hard enough. He didn't stay in the gym. He didn't stay in shape. He got progressively worse and worse in terms of his conditioning. At times when Kobe wanted to ratchet it up, get in the gym more and do more, I think it was the engine of Kobe Bryant that drove them across all Kobe's championships. I believe that because we've seen Shaq before and he didn't win, and we saw him after when he had another player like Dwayne Wade to drive. But it wasn't a situation where I felt like Shaq had the seriousness where he was ever going to anchor a team unless he had another like really, really almost equal level player. And it certainly wasn't going to be his work ethic that pushed the team across. Like when you look at great champions, and like not just some one-time champions, but you look at great multiple champions, they're the guys who drive it, the Currys, the James, the Jordans. These are guys that are relentless about their preparation to get back and to be motivated athletically, not with all of the things that go on around the court. And I think that was way more Kobe than it was Shaq.
It may have been, but it was his 37 points and 14 rebounds a game.
Yeah, listen, you know me. I'm never one to take anybody's
how much work.
I don't take anybody's stuff, accomplishments off the board. But I also think that when you've watched and you know, like, and you have the ability to be able to look at Shaq's career as a whole, Shaq could have got, and we talked about this like years ago, Shaq got probably the least out of his gifts of what he could have got. He could have been
the least.
Oh,
he got 4 championships. Least,
but he could have had 8.
The least, though.
Yeah, like I mean, Shaq.
The least.
I personally think
4 champions. That's a lot of championships.
When you think about his dominance, when you think about Shaq's dominance, he left. He could have been a way better rebounder. Those rebound numbers that he got in the finals, he could have averaged that for a career.
I think, yeah, okay, and that's fair. I mean, he averaged close to, well, not close. I think it was 11.
Yeah, and he takes a lot of pride in. And I think this is the point you're making. He takes a lot of pride in when the game was on, I was the man.
I don't think anyone's going to argue that Shaq was a vision of fitness. You know,
in the early years, he was a specimen.
Well, but that's because that was his metabolism. Like he had nothing to do with that, and I think that bared out as his career went on. And I think that Kobe's frustrations were correct. Yeah. I agree that Shaq should have come into training camp. I think Shaq maybe has admitted as much, if I'm not mistaken. But to bring it back to where we were, it was just within context about being the GOAT. I think that Kobe I put him somewhere around the D Wade, in D Wade's category. That's where
I say for me, he's definitely not the GOAT. He's not in the conversation, like, for me.
But that's not being disrespectful, and I think that's the thing.
I'm not trying to disrespect.
That's the thing that like people were like having a heart attack on all of.
Well, I think maybe what I agree with is like how like you get the answer and then you see the work. I maybe not agree with the work or how you got to the answer. Yeah, but I think we're both at the same point. I don't see him as a GOAT, but I think I put him higher than a lot of people because, in fairness, there's a lot of people who agree with you. Like there's not like you're not out on some island.
They not in my comments.
But you're not Nick writing it right now where you're out on some island alone. Like there's a lot of people who agree that Kobe may be borderline top 10. Like 10, 11, 12.
Somewhere around there. That's where I have him. I have Steph Curry ahead of him.
Yeah, well now we have to really have a real conversation about Steph. But I put Kobe a little bit higher because I believe that Kobe was an engine, whether he was the leading scorer or not. I believe he was the engine to a 5-time champion. And I put a lot of emphasis on winning.
Hey, I ain't here to argue with you today.
What else you want to do? You want to turn the cameras off and argue now? We got the cameras on now. Go for it.
I think Shaq was the guy. And
Shaq was the man.
Yeah.
I just wish Shaq would have done more. Shaq could have had a Wilt Chamberlain type.
Well, yes, in a real league.
Right. In a wider league, a 30-team,
when you compete against a lot of black people.
And you're not like Wilt was like the only guy his size and athleticism at that time.
Yeah. Wilt was competing against Stanley.
Yeah, I mean, and just a lot of guys. I mean, the game as he has evolved.
Starting at center, Stanley Milliken. 6'1".
And I think that's a good place to evolve this conversation or to move this conversation a little bit, because in another post that you had, which is also getting a lot of I want to say negative attention, but attention.
People are taking issue.
And this one's interesting because I think it's the same thing. I don't disagree with your end result, but I don't like how you work the math. You said, and I'm gonna paraphrase this. You said that, and Scottie, for whatever it's worth, too. I'm jumping all over. Scottie Pippen said yesterday on the Summer League telecast, effectively what you said. Players today are better, more skilled, bigger, stronger, faster means better, basically, which is effectively what you said. Now, you made the argument, and this is the issue that I have. You made the argument that guys that played in the previous era would be G Leaguers, that Joe Dumars, particularly you said Joe Dumars would be in the G League. And I thought you went full Nick Wright on that one.
I like Nick Wright.
Nick Wright's a prick.
Secondly, Joe Dumars would have been in the G League if he was lucky.
If he was lucky.
I mean, I don't see, like, Joe Dumars looked like he played saxophone full time. Like, and then he came to
he do kind of look like the dude that was the manager of the 5 Heartbeats, and then would go play sax on when he got hit by the. Remember when my man got hit by the truck?
Yeah. He managed the 5 Heartbeats. Yeah, he looked exactly like him.
Yeah, he's kind of he gave you that vibe, like he did go down to the club, get a cognac, and sit in with the band.
Yeah.
He didn't look like, but he can play ball though.
After the game,
but joking ball. I'm not gonna listen.
He go do his real gig.
I feel crazy as a Chicago Bull fan sitting here in defense of a Detroit Piston, and I can almost hear my brothers, like, when they see this, gonna call me like, what you doing? But I have to defend Joe Dumars. Like, I'm not gonna just.
Was he president of the Players Association for a while?
Yeah, and he was a GM. He actually
McNeese State.
He drafted Darko Milicic.
Your guy.
Was not my guy.
LeBron.
Get the fuck out of here.
He's gonna be better than LeBron.
It was ridiculous.
He playing against grown men.
Ridiculous.
LeBron playing against kids.
Ridiculous. We dispelled it. We did not say. Nobody said that. Nobody. Who said
Darko?
When did anybody say he was going to be better than LeBron?
We ain't had a technology.
When did anybody say he was going to be better than LeBron?
We ain't had a technology. We had a dictaphone, but that was it. That was for melodies. I should have got you on. I should have held him right there.
Nobody would say that. And
he's playing against grown men.
Go ahead. Have your way.
All right.
Go ahead. Write it out.
Sorry.
But the Dumars thing is just too far. But I'm gonna let you have the stage and explain the whole scope of the whole argument so our listeners can understand what you put into the quick hitter 1 minute, but expand on that same way you did the Kobe thing.
All right. So what really got me going was Cedric Maxwell talking about it was a pregame during the finals, basically saying that if Draymond would have tried those tactics back when he was playing, that he would have gotten knocked out. And I was like, Cedric, when Cedric Maxwell played, he was 6'8", 200 pounds. That's the body mass index of a 5'1", 100-pound woman. So, and Draymond Green, 6'6", 6'7", 240. If he was gonna get knocked out, Cedric Maxwell wasn't gonna be the one doing the knocking out.
Cornbread. Maxwell.
Yeah. Cornbread. He need to eat some cornbread. And I know he had a great career, finals MVP. I got you. But all I'm saying is that we're talking about players who are, again, bigger, stronger, faster. And by all accounts, you want to name the metric. I mean, you look at the Olympics. You look at all these records are being broken. They're faster. They're lifting more weight. They're jumping higher. And you have guards who are playing above the rim, whether it's Dejounte Murray or Ja Morant. I mean, these guys they're just bigger, stronger, faster, more skilled. And
able to use science
and nutrition
to their benefit to expand on what their capabilities are.
And one of the knocks was, again, in our comments about the GOAT, that LeBron would not have been able to survive in that era. So you're telling me a guy who was bigger than Michael, stronger theoretically than Michael, wouldn't have been able to take the pounding that Michael or any of the other players, the great players, would have taken back. So I took exception to that. And these guys going in the street corner, man, these young boys now, they more wild than ever. They'll shoot you. So these people coming from a more violent circumstances, more impetuous circumstances, all of a sudden wouldn't be able to survive somehow in a more simpler time. And I felt like that was ridiculous. I felt like the guys, the league was more physical back then. That much cannot be argued. But that's because the rules were different. The flagrant foul didn't come into existence until the 90-91 season. You could literally, if there was a fight on the floor,
it was just a common foul.
But you could come off the bench and get you a couple of licks in.
Yeah, and they did.
And they did. You remember
they didn't stop doing that until they didn't put that rule into the Malice at the Palace.
Yeah, and you remember the Jeff Van Gundy fight? Yeah. Where Jeff Van Gundy's holding on to the guy.
Yeah, I think it was Malice at the Palace. No. Maybe it was the Alonzo. That was Alonzo Mourning where they said you couldn't come off the bench.
If you step foot on the floor, you're subject to a suspension and a fine. And it's a hard rule again. They go back and look at the footage on that. So these guys, they're just playing within the confines of the rule. And if you put them in a time machine, you drop them back in the 1985 game, they would adjust. They would adjust to the rules.
And the only thing that I would say again against, it's one of those things where I'm not really arguing because I think you're making very clear logical points. What I would add to it is that I think it works in reverse. I think if you took players that were great players then and dropped them into today, I'm not saying all of them would be able to adjust, but a lot of them would be able to adjust to the game that's way it's played today.
The greats Magic would have still been great. Bird would have still been great. Michael obviously would have still been great.
That's why sometimes these sweeping
the
generalizations.
But the argument is never the other way. That's why I felt like I needed to make the point.
Right.
Because I was like, what are you talking about? LeBron is like Draymond. These guys, Steph Curry would still be Kyrie. These guys still be warming their asses up, even worse. So I feel like I just felt like it's always like that. Like guys always feel like back in their time when they was moving around, when they were cool, that it was better back then, and it just wasn't.
Well, I think, and I tell this too in the music context, being in the music industry, we have the same conversations. Like, hip hop guys ain't nobody rapping. It ain't rapping like they used to.
Okay.
But then it's like when you go back and listen, some of it doesn't. It doesn't age as well. Some does, some doesn't.
That disco rap.
You know what I mean?
Like hop, a hip. Like I'm sorry, Rapper Delight is not better than any song Kendrick Lamar's ever put out. I'm just saying that.
And again, I think what's fair about your comment is I don't know who would argue that. But the sweeping, it was better then, or it's better now, or it's better now, or it's better then, that's what's wrong in the argument.
To me, it's irrelevant because you need them both. You need
you would never get to Kendrick Lamar if you didn't have that moment.
Yes.
That's why that record's important. But we're not going to sit here and pretend like the bars were
the sickest.
Yeah, like he was.
Like, what are we talking about?
You know what I mean? So I think it's always a little bit, and it's the barbershop.
Jay-Z's better than Rakim. I'm sorry. Jay-Z's better than Rakim. I'm sorry, New York. I know if y'all are passing out right now.
New York. They both New York.
Yeah, but I'm saying, but you find people like Rakim, like no one's ever been better. Like, no, Jay-Z's better.
Well, I think what happens too is things have a
blasphemous right now. So
I think there's sentimentality too that goes in that I think has to be factored in. And I think this is what I was saying earlier about when you start to look at people's careers as a whole, is how many of those moments in time are locked in with the audience, whether it's Dr. J's cradle dunk, which maybe is not as spectacular athletically today as it was in 83 when he did it. But in that moment when he did it, it was like you jumped off your couch. You know, it was like, it's one of those, I remember where I was when I saw that, or him going under the basket with the thing. It's like, those are iconic moments. And I think when we look back, we're always going to remember that versus a player's efficiency rating, or particularly when because that was in a final.
Well, and they're projecting, right? They're connecting their feelings to that moment, and it brings back nostalgia, and it was better then, and that was back when I was dating this girl, and she was so fine.
Yeah. And I had a leather jacket and the curl.
and the members only.
Yeah. but I will say this, though. That matters. I think that's a factor. I think how we see it and how we remember it. We remember Dr. J so fondly. I don't know what he scored points per game.
We should remember him. He's deserving of all of the fondness.
So when people go, Dr. J was better than Iceman Gervin, it really probably had to do with just those moments on those stages, even though Iceman probably had more points per game. He might have been more efficient. He maybe had more rebounds. Maybe he didn't.
I don't even know.
But the point is, we never saw Iceman in that moment that we saw Dr. J. And even a little bit before my time, definitely before your time, when he was playing on the Nets against the Trailblazers and in the ABA, and it was going crazy, making all kinds of ridiculous plays. But he was like the guy, he was the showman of the league. And that's what why people remember that moment. Or Jim Brown. We talk about Jim Brown all the time, but it's lore. You know what I mean? Or it's like Gail Sayers.
Totally lore.
But I think that matters. I think that matters. Like when you start, because when you get away from the record books and you just remember moments, those are the things that stick with you.
They do, but it doesn't translate to better. That's the only thing.
Yeah, well, you got to be able to have the conversation in the context by simply saying, for me, this guy was the greatest guy.
Well, okay, okay. I will because you're the king of context.
Yes,
and it's sorely needed. I'll say this: Tupac is my favorite rapper. He ain't better than Drake. But you wanted my favorite,
right.
And I think people get
their favorite confused with the best. Right.
Yeah, Kobe may be your favorite.
Yes,
he ain't the GOAT.
Right, and I think it's very fair, especially if you're from the West Coast. If Kobe was your favorite, like I'm not gonna who
he
am
would
I?
Be my favorite.
Yeah, like Kobe got down.
Hey, yeah, man. If Kobe signed with the Hawks today, he would be my favorite. I'm just saying. Hey, we got a spot open. That's all I'm saying.
Listen, real quick.
I'll take them right now.
Real quick before we get out of here. Have you been able to watch or click in any of the Summer League? Because I don't know if you realize how big of the an issue the Summer League has become. It's like it's almost like a unofficial NBA convention. All the guys come out.
It's getting more media, I think, than ever before. And the games are on TV.
Well, the games are on TV, but it's almost like the things going on around. Like LeBron's out there. You feel like the GMs are out there making deals, trying to fill out their rosters. I mean, one of the things that I saw that I thought was super dope, like 9 of my Bulls were out there together. It was like an AAU team waiting for their game. It was like Lonzo, DeRozan, Patrick Williams. It was like 9 of the dudes, and they all sitting together on the first row watching the young fellas play. And I like that. That was good for me to see in terms of camaraderie.
Sure.
And then the thing is, it's not just like the guys fighting for jobs that are showing up. LeBron is out there. LeBron, which I thought was super dope. LeBron brought his own snacks. He had a Ziploc bag with his own snacks. They say he's notoriously cheap. I don't know if this is true or not, but they say he's notoriously cheap. And if he was doing it for nutrition, I get it. But if he was doing it because he didn't want to spend no money in Vegas, that's hilarious.
Well, they say that he's been doing that since AAU.
Oh, really? Just packing his own lunch?
Well, because health reasons. Like Kendrick Perkins tells a story. He played on his AAU team for one season. He was like, you're at these
complexes,
gyms for long periods of time. He said, while everybody else up at McDonald's, he got his own Ziploc bags of fruit, that he's eating throughout the day. He said this dude was 15 years old.
That's why his body looked like it does.
And that's why mine.
I was at the McDonald's table.
I was totally at the.
I was at McDowell's table.
Can I get a super size?
I was over there with McDowell.
No, a super size, please. I'll wait for the hot fries. I'll wait the 2 minutes.
Real fat boy stuff.
Hold on, man. Them fries coming up out that grease, boy. When they put it, and they just keep doing like
the
this
right
with
amount of salt, just running your blood pressure up.
Boy, yes. And you get it.
Even your childhood pressure like 140 over 100. You know what I mean? As a kid.
But you could feel the heat through the red box.
No, that's real. But nah, man. Chet came out quick, had a big game initially.
2 duds after that.
And then 2 duds. But I think that happens a lot in summer league. It's not much to glean from it.
You don't put too much stock in any of that stuff outside of if anything, I thought that it was it showed a good sign for the OKC.
Yeah,
that they got a player.
I thought it was dope too that they had Giddey play summer league, because like a lot of guys who have guys that played as many minutes, they just let them sit out. But I'm like, y'all got a young team. Let them go play. They got fresh legs. Let them go play.
Well, you would think, but a lot of times, man, these NBA coaches, man, and these staffs, sometimes they get caught in trends, and I think that you have to sometimes break those if you want to, start something new. Like for instance, like with the minutes rotation, like a lot of times, man, if it's let's say Lonzo's time to sit, they're in the middle of a run. They're in the middle of a run, like, hey, wait a minute, we got something going.
Well, I thought that the Bulls should have played Ayo DeSumo in summer league. I mean, don't get me wrong, he carried a lot of minutes and played very well.
In the second half of the season, especially,
and played very well. But I would have had him out there with the new wing and Marko Simonovic or whatever. And like, man, that was your class. You go play with them.
Hey, speaking of Minovich, man, y'all think y'all gonna get Darko back after what?
We thank y'all for tuning in to listen to Stat Lines Matter. We ask you to like, subscribe, and get the notifications on our YouTube channel. Also, follow us across all of our social media platforms at Stat Lines Matter on Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, and what's the other one?
YouTube.
Instagram,
YouTube.
Yeah, YouTube, all of them.
Hey, you didn't put anything on SoundCloud lately?
Nah, SoundCloud, we out of that. We out of SoundCloud. And of course, where any audio podcast is found, Spotify or Apple Podcasts, any other place.
Our iHeartRadio, we syndicated. Syndicatable.
We are not.
We're not on iHeart.
Not yet, but we going to be.
And Spotify. We on there?
Nah, we going to be on all that, though. XM, Sirius XM, all
Sirius
that.
XM. We
coming to a Sirius XM channel near you very soon.
Hey, we're taking bids now.
Exactly.
The lines are open.
Get in early. But yeah, but I want to, I'm glad you got an opportunity to really expound, because I actually think you have some forward thoughts on that. And like I said, a lot of people agree with you on the Kobe thing, but we are definitely not one of those people who sit back and go, oh, it was better before or it's better now. I think context is everything. I think there are certain players, LeBron James is an any era player, but no one can argue that the things that these guys are doing today and the skills that they're bringing, this kid that's coming out from France, that's going to be the number 1 pick.
Oh, yeah.
This kid's from all estimates, is 7'4", 7'5", point guard skills, 8 feet worth of arms. The tray be falling, the mid range is solid, the handles, you got the ball on the string. It's like
if you had endless VC on 2K, you could just continue, you just max the player out.
Yeah, and it's like that's what's happening right now, and we're seeing it in real time. And you see it because you're on the circuit, you're on the AAU circuit, and you see these kids that are 15 years old, they're 6'8", they're 6'7", with point guard skills and wing skills. And all the swag. Yeah.
Like all the swag and all the pageantry that comes around it, huge social media following. Yeah. And they're kids. Yeah. But the business that I believe now through, again, LeBron and some other players that have come after, they're starting to recognize the power of social media and what that business. And there's one player in particular that gets $30,000
just to show up.
I mean, it's illegal, but he's getting $30K to show up to your tournament. Yeah. And he'll play in 2 tournaments in the same city that weekend
to get that bag.
$60,000.
I love it. Well, listen, I don't have an issue with that, even though it sort of pushes at the idea of amateurism, which we've had that conversation on another podcast.
He already got his Neil deal.
And I actually want to revisit our discussion that we had from a couple years on amateurism as well. And I want to see if you change your mind a little bit on that.
Let's do it.
So listen, I know we went a little bit over, but we thank you for tuning in. This is Stat Lines Man. I'm Mark Stewart, Rob Hunter. Peace.
Bad boy. I ain't come for games. Say it to my face. Say it to my face. I ain't come for games. Say it to my face. Say it to my face.